Welcome to the Consciousness Explorers Workshop, an all-day educational event presented by Akandadi Das at the Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Studies that will be a unique exploration of our existence, life, the universe, and the central role of consciousness in the reality all around us. Akandadi studied architecture at University of Bristol in England. He served as principal of Bhaktivedanta Manor Theological College from 1982 to 1995, has served on the Central Religious Advisory Board for the BBC, and was the director of Buckland Hall, Wales from 1996 to 2020. He is a founding member of the Science and Philosophy Initiative and a board member of the Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Studies, as well as the creator of the Atma Paradigm online lecture series. His specialized area of interest is the nature of consciousness. So welcome to everyone on Zoom. Please note that we will not have the Zoom volume up. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And now I'll send it over to Akandadi.
Thank you, Dina. Very happy to be here with us here in Gainesville. Fantastic facility and a great place to create a forum for discussions on some of the more interesting aspects of life and the world around us. This is the Consciousness Explorers workshop, and just trying to tell me we're recording. I want to get rid of that. We're going to have 4 sessions. This first session, and my clicker is not helping me. First session, part 1, is consciousness and existence. We have 4 big questions of life. Consciousness. We'll talk about that one. Matter. What is matter and reality? Life. What is it? The universe. How big is it? Where is it all from? You know, how do these things happen? And the Atma paradigm has tried to look at each of these. Normally it's a long set of lectures and gets rather detailed. And what we're doing today is condensing it down. And on the basis of that condensing, certain things are going to get mentioned, but not necessarily developed very deeply. You'll have to go and search them out. I will establish certain principles, and then maybe there will certainly be questions, and you will want to know more about the mechanisms and how all that works. That's all available. But today we want to give a flavor. So what we're going to do is we're going to condense it like this. The first 2 sessions actually will focus on consciousness. That's the morning sessions. In the afternoon, we're looking into reality and how consciousness affects reality. And then we've squeezed half of the Atma paradigm into the last section on life and the universe. So they're going to be covered rather cursorily, which I hope will be all right. But because today we are focusing on consciousness, we're looking at the role of consciousness as it flows through these things. So let's look at the Atma paradigm. 4 big questions. Now, science is very helpful to us. It explores each of these topics, but it can do so really only within a boundary. And that boundary is set by science itself. It's set by its methodology, how it decides how to explore things and what it can know from those things. So that defines its own boundary. And that's shown in this hexagon here. And science is a methodology. It's not a body of science. It builds a kind of understanding as it goes. But it's a methodology to keep on refining that knowledge. It establishes confidence in evidence, not exactly facts, but confidence in evidence and how we can understand that evidence. It models our experience of the world. It's not necessarily describing the world necessarily as it is, but certainly our experience of the world. And it has to be interpreted by philosophical perspective. So whenever we talk about a narrative of science or make large theories, there will always be some philosophical and metaphysical perspective that is guiding that interpretation. Whatever you accept as your philosophical outlook will determine the sort of theory you develop for what you're exploring within science. So philosophy is really important. And philosophy can help guide what's inside that hexagon. but it can also start to help us explore beyond the boundaries of what science can actually reach. And mainly when we talk about those boundaries, we're talking about origins. What comes before? These become philosophical questions because we ultimately get to a point where science cannot test anything on that regard. So philosophy, how do we know what we know? What is truth? What is, the truth about everything? And it involves skepticism, doubt, and questioning. And it sets up axioms. It also does that. It sets up what is its basis and uses logical development to work from those axioms. And that's going to be important because we're going to do exactly the same today. And it sets up discussion and debate, and I'm sure we'll have some of that. And ultimately, we have to make sure that whatever is our philosophical outlook and belief, does it match actually our intuitions? Or are we being asked to follow a philosophy or outlook that is contrary to what we kind of feel is the truth of things? So every person has to ask themselves that question. So besides the science and philosophy input, we need to tie it together into a bigger framework, a kind of theory of everything. Now, to help us do that in the Atma paradigm, we have borrowed on previous thinkers. Who has been exploring these aspects of consciousness and life and what is matter? Who's been exploring that for centuries and centuries? And we're going back and looking at their insights, and we're going to bring in some of them, particularly related to the Vedic tradition. Now, we're not going to be discussing them specifically. We're not asking you to have belief in them because they're from the Vedic tradition, but we're going to borrow some things, and I may draw attention to that, or it may just be something that is naturally incorporated because it's a straightforward philosophical debate. Some new ideas, some things that are worth thinking about, some techniques, some ways of analyzing that might help you. But the only way you're going to know anything for certain is if you know it. So, the Consciousness Explorer is this combination of personal insight, philosophical logic, scientific evidence, and authoritative experience. We start in philosophy with asking ourselves, what is the one thing we can know for certain? What is that one thing that we know absolutely for certain? Not because someone's told us, not because we've read it. And it really comes down to this question: do you exist? Could I have a quick round the room just to check? Do you exist? Otherwise, no lunch. Sure. It's the one thing we do know. I exist. And question is, why do you think you exist? What's convincing you? Is it because I feel stuff? I experience stuff? I see stuff? I know stuff? I like stuff? Isn't it? So this is our pre-philosophical axiom. It's pre-philosophical because although we kind of sounded a little philosophical, we weren't proving this by philosophy, were we? You already know this. You know, I meet a lot of people who say, I'm only going to know things that are proved to me by science. Do you exist? Yes. Science didn't prove that to you. Science can't prove that to you. Philosophy can't prove it to you. No book can prove that to you. Only you know it for yourself. It's therefore a pre-philosophical axiom that you can bank on. You know it for certain. And it's so important. Because if we then develop other ideas in philosophy, science, or even religion that don't equate to this, or don't explain the fact that I exist, or I believe that I exist, or I'm certain that I exist, then it's not going to be complete, is it? So, what is this thing about existence? What makes it a little different to non-existence? Thomas Nagel, philosopher, tried to help philosophers get into this subject. I don't know if it's actually particularly helpful, but it's the standard way of getting into the subject. What is it like to be a bat? I don't know if there's anyone scared of bats, but here they are. I think he chose it because they have experiences very different to ours. They're obviously got echolocation. It's kind of radar thing. They hear frequencies which we don't even know what that sounds like. You know, we've got no idea what that would sound like. They fly. They chomp on the insects. Anyone got a good experience of that? No. So they're very different. So he kind of wanted us to stop, to get out of just taking our own existence for granted, because we do. I wake up every day and just go about my daily business. I exist, I just live, you know. But really, he wanted us to meditate on what it was that I am this thing that is experiencing. So by thinking about the bat and thinking about what it might experience, we're starting to kind of have another look at ourselves. That was the purpose of his meditation. So there is something, and that it is like to be me. This something that it is like is a kind of very wishy-washy way that many philosophers talk about philosophy, because we're struggling. I know what it is. I feel my existence, but I don't know what you're thinking. And it's very hard to articulate. It's not like telling you, you know, I'd like a cup of tea or something. It's not as simple as that. How do I convey that there is something that it is like to be me? This is our trying to articulate this very strange thing about sensing our own existence. Another analogy that is used are zombies. Now, they're very popular on the movies and on the television channels, very popular. And it's not always clear that they really are zombies, because a lot of the time they seem to be doing things which shows intelligence, willfulness, and even experience in an inner life. Now, philosophical zombie, and that's what we want to talk about. This is the idea that there is a complete, exact replica of us as humans, down to the last bit of DNA, down to the last cell, complete replica. And it seems to be able to do the things. It can move around, you know, it can process data from the world, but it's not experiencing that inside. There is no one in there sensing its existence. As we say, I don't know if you got the phrase here, you know, the lights are on, but there's no one at home, right? There's just nothing's there. So the idea is to meditate on this idea that there could be a state that is exactly like us, but doesn't have this strange sense of our own existence. Again, that's just a way of helping us meditate on the essential specialness of my sense of existence. So this leads us to then conclude that I am a sentient thing. Now, this, of course, reflects Descartes' work. When he did this, what can I know for certain? And you know, he analyzed that and came up with his famous French phrase, je pense, donc je suis. I think, therefore I am. And of course, it's generally known in Latin, cogito ergo sum. So, but his thing is, I am a thinking thing. I think, therefore I am. And we're going to kind of, I don't feel that's satisfactory, because thinking these days in the world of tech and data processing, thinking almost seems to be a mechanical process. So I think he should have said, I experience, therefore I am. And when we talk about sentience, we're going to be talking about experience. So this leads us to the discussion on consciousness. What is it? And science and philosophy have a hard time trying to define it. They really have. There's so many different terms and concepts, and conflated, used, in different ways, even on the same page. It's very difficult. We've got a workshop going to try and unravel all of that to help academia on it. There's a range of interpretations, again, of what each of those words mean. It's considered to be that consciousness is complex and still not fully understood, and that there is no single accepted definition. Now, you should understand why they say these two things. Often, I meet neuroscientists who complain there isn't an accepted definition of consciousness. But what they are putting forward as a criterion for an acceptable definition is one that allows them to explain how consciousness arises from the brain. And they haven't got an acceptable definition that does that. But wait a minute, that's a double definition, isn't it? We only need to explain consciousness. Why do we need a definition that explains consciousness and where it comes from as a particular source, right? That doesn't seem to be, it's like saying, give me a definition of water, but only as it comes from the taps, or don't, so what's this stuff coming down from the sky at the moment? Oh, that's not water, is it? No, it didn't come from the taps, and it can't be water. So you can't tie down consciousness to a source and say that's what we need a definition for. We need to understand consciousness as it is. And how are we going to understand it as it is? It's how we experience it. So here's how we experience consciousness. That annoying time between naps. So we hope that you are currently between naps at the moment, because we're going to do the thing, we're going to look at this annoying thing of consciousness during this period while you're wide awake. So in order to do this, we're going to develop what we are still calling pre-philosophical, but these are pre-philosophical insights. They build on that axiom, but they become insights because they become your realizations about the nature of your own consciousness. And for these, I'm borrowing on a 16th century writer called Jiva Goswami, who analyzed several kind of key insights that he believed were fitted into this pre-philosophical aspect. And he placed them at the beginning of his own development of philosophy. So they formed an essential part of his epistemology, how he knows things. So the first one, I am the observer of my body and action. So we're going to do a little reflection. We haven't got huge amounts of time to get into this very deeply, so we're just going to try it just so that you understand it and maybe, can adopt it in more quiet and times of your own. So relax and close your eyes. Actually, no, sorry. First of all, we have to open our eyes. First of all, we have to open our eyes and we have to look outside that window and see things far away, right? So you can see there's houses out there and there's grass. I can see grass and cars and things. You can look out that window if it's easier. But that's the scene. You are the seer. There's a difference. That's the thing you're seeing. You are the thing that's seeing, right? Now look at the room, the screen, the thing you're seeing. You're the seer. Now regard your own body. I see my hand, my arm, I see my legs, my feet. They're the things I'm seeing. I am the seer. Now close your eyes. Let's go inside. Let's have a look at your tummy. How's it doing? You know, it's digesting the food you had for breakfast. So that's interesting. Which of you, that you're watching that, and that you are the seer or the experiencer of the kind of feelings in your tummy, and it's while it's doing its thing, you can even focus on your heart. Hear it beating, feel it beating. You are the seer. That is the scene. On your breathing, your lungs are filling and releasing. You are the seer. That is the scene. So in this way, we're starting to appreciate that this thing that thinks it's, you can return now, you can come back from your tummy. Uh, you're appreciating that this thing that is doing the experience in this. And now we're going to go a little deeper. We're going to do a little reflection on the same thing about being the observer of our thoughts. Now, again, relax. And now this time, close your eyes. And I just want you, you're going to let your mind wander. And you're just going to watch it as it wanders. And I'm going to give you a little seed to start with. Somewhere nice. And with your eyes still closed, stop that reverie, keep your eyes closed, but go back now and try and piece together the flow of thoughts that you just had. What came first? What went next? Where did that go? Try and retrace those thoughts. Raise a hand if you've been able to do that to some degree. Yeah? Being able to retrace your thoughts. That's called higher order thinking. You're not, previously you were just thinking. You were just receiving the thoughts as they came. But this time, you're actually going back and thinking about the thoughts, isn't it? Close your eyes again. Now, understand yourself as the person, the thing that is thinking about your thoughts. Who's doing the thinking about the thoughts? That's you. So that's a higher order again. Okay, back to the room. So we have thoughts, which we normally experience, and that's most of our life. It's just kind of going with the thoughts. Occasionally, we do think about our thoughts, and that involves a higher order level of cognition. Now, what we're doing is, if there is the me thinking about the thoughts, then who is that me doing the thinking about the thoughts? That becomes a higher level of analysis. So when this says, I am the witness to my thoughts, you are the individual who has just witnessed that flow of thoughts. You've even been the witness to the thinking about the flow of thoughts, because that wasn't you either. That was still another flow of thoughts, right? But you ultimately are the witness to all types of that thinking. And we are the subject of our experiences, meaning that we say, I am walking, I see, I feel, I hear, I taste, and I, inner things. I feel hungry, I feel thirsty, I like, I don't like. And so it's I. That is the subject of the experiences. When we're doing things, we're not thinking it's happening to someone else. Sometimes there are very strange circumstances that really do feel like, I don't know who's going through this. You know, it doesn't seem like me. There are situations like that, and there's a reason for that. But in principle, we are the entity doing the experiencing. And I am the persistent witness, observer throughout my life. Again, please close your eyes. Another little reflection. I want you to cast your mind back. Go back to, say, your first day at school, if that's all right. And see yourself there. See the environment that you're in. Where was it? What was going on? And now look at what Now, a lot of philosophers make a big deal of this. And they say, yeah, but when I was in that childhood body, in school, I was like a different person. Oh, what's happened? Sorry. A break. Is that okay now? Yeah. Give us a nod. Lights, camera, action. Huh? Just been saying, you know, telling you where to go, and I'm not even sure where I am myself at this moment. So we were there then, we are here now. And although some philosophers try to make a little bit of a deal of this, because they say that the you that was experiencing that child, you know, experienced it in a particular way. So that's a different you to the person who would experience now. No, it doesn't work like that. That was me feeling like that then because of what I thought I knew then and what I thought I wanted then and what I thought was going on then, which was probably pretty silly. But it's still the me now who's going through the things. So consciousness is the persistent witness throughout my life. That's the important takeaway there. So this gives us and a fifth one, that in all of this, what do I want? What do I actually want? What is the kind of the one thing that is perpetual in my persistent witness of all this world and everything that's going on inside me? What is that one thing that is constant? I aspire to enhance my experiences. Anyone not into that? Now, some people are only happy when they're miserable. But that's still, they want to be happy, so they want more miserable experiences. But, you know, it's always the same, that I aspire to enhance my experiences. This is an interesting one because it's not only universal in humans. We will see that it actually seems to apply broadly in life to other life forms. So these are 5 pre-theoretical insights. I am the observer of my body and actions. I am witness to my thoughts. I am the subject of my experiences. I am the persistent witness throughout my life, and I aspire to enhance my experiences. Now, John Searle, a philosopher who I don't always agree with, but this I thought was very insightful. And he did a good job trying to combine all this into a very simple way of saying, what do we need to explain by all of this stuff that we know about consciousness? He says, any explanation of consciousness must account for unified qualitative subjectivity. Now, you probably got that, didn't you? So it needs a bit unpacking. But basically, it works like this, that those three words really are explained here. It's the sense of personal individual existence. That's the unified. I'm a unified individual. Faculty of sentient experience, right? And that sentient experience is subjective. So that's the subjectivity. And we are the persistent first person experiencer. And the other word he uses, qualitative. This means the experience of phenomenal qualities. Now, what the heck's that about? This is where it starts to be real fun. The qualitative qualities. Let me introduce you to that. The experience of phenomenal qualities. I want you to do this experiment for yourself. I'm sure you all did it as kids, you know. 2 fingers, I'll let you see that. And you're just putting them about this distance from your eye and about this far apart. And if you do that, you can move it back and forwards or in and out a little bit, but you'll start to see there's a floating finger. If, you know, maybe you're too close together, give a little gap, no, and then move them closer to you. Think your fingers may be too close together there, you know, but just here, straight forward, you can see this floating finger in front of you, can't you? Anyone not got it? Take your glasses off. You're bringing your fingers together. You're going to keep them apart. Yep. Okay, then move it around and you'll start to see that it gets into focus. And all right, you know, you're too close. Keep them apart. No, you're not so close to your eye, but your fingers further apart. Further. You know, maybe, yeah. All right, so you are seeing a floating finger out there, right? Is there a floating finger in front of your eyes? Of course not. That does not exist in the real world. But it exists in your experience of it. And it exists in your experience as a picture, as an image. It's not just a general concept. It's not imaginary. You are seeing it with your eyes, or at least it looks like you're seeing it with your eyes, but you are looking at something and seeing something that is not there. But you are seeing that image. So where could that image be? If it's not out there, where is it? Well, we'll come to that, yes. Because we know it's not out there. We know it's not in the eyes, because actually the explanation for this illusion is if you close one eye, you don't see anything. You just see the 2 tips of the fingers, right? Go back and forwards. So therefore, so that's explained it. It's to do with stereoscopic vision, you know? We've got 2 images which are being overlapped on each other. We're overlapping 2 images so that we can see this. But where's that overlapping happening? It's not happening outside there, and it's not happening in the eyes. Is it happening in the brain? Right? That's what they would say. The brain must be putting those 2 pictures together. But so this picture exists in the brain. I didn't know the brain had pictures in it. I thought it had electricity. I thought it was ions jumping from one cell to another. Now you're telling me it's got a picture in there? No, the brain doesn't have that. There's no picture in the brain. This does not exist as a picture in your brain. There may be data related to that finger and data related to that finger, but the brain hasn't got a picture of that. The brain has no pictures. This is what we mean that this has qualities, phenomenal qualities, that don't exist in the external world. They exist internally. Yeah, they are part of our own internal mental reflection. Wow. So my mental reflection has something that the brain doesn't have. Oh, that's interesting. Now, let's look at the neuroscience on this. This is a set of drawings set up by Christoph Koch. Christoph Koch started to work with Francis Crick in the early 90s. Francis Crick, you know, from DNA fame. After he said he thought he'd cracked life, have sorted that out. Now the other big one is consciousness. You know, he probably would have got onto matter and universe and be talking his own Atma paradigm, you know, if he got around to it. But he decided now we're going to have a go at consciousness. And he and Christoph Koch worked together on a theory they call neural correlates of consciousness. And in that, in some of the work that Christoph Koch did, he published this picture. Now, what this tries to show is the mechanics of perception. We've got the external world here, guy walking his dog in the park. Okay, nice little picture there. And light is bouncing off that scene and entering the eye here. We all know how that works. We've heard about that, right? And the eye is processing that, you know, with the cones and rods on the retina. These are basically photosensitive. So the cones relate to particular wavelengths. The rods just relate to intensity. So they send signals, bleep, 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 back into the brain. And it forms these connections of the neurons. They've shown it nicely kind of diagrammatized, if you like, as kind of digital data, because that's what it is. The brain's got digital data stored in the form of neural pathways. And you can explore that. You can really get into that in great detail. And the neuroscientists are doing it. And it's incredible the level of accuracy and way that they are delving into those sort of pathways and things and trying to show how they correlate with experience. I stress that word, correlate. But then, so that's all fine. There's no dispute on that. That's absolutely correct. But what Christoph Koch shows next is a bit of a sleight of hand. He says, and that generates the qualitative percept, the thing you experience, the picture you experience. And we're all supposed to go, yeah, okay, that explains why I see the world. Wait a minute. It's a picture. It's got qualities that doesn't have. It's got properties that doesn't have. That looks like something. That isn't ever going to look like something. And there's something qualitatively different between that. So that's why we have to focus on what on earth is going on here. And this comes to a very interesting topic called qualia. Many people think it's my favorite topic. And what does qualia mean? In simple terms, what we experience. Now, we learned this from Christina last week, that whenever you say a particularly important word, and we need us to understand it more, we repeat something. So whenever I say qualia, you're going to say what we experience. So that's how we go. So this brings us to the topic of qualia. Excellent. Thank you, Christina. And more precisely, qualia are the qualities of our inner experience. The qualities. And because those qualities are internal, we distinguish them from whatever are the qualities of stuff outside by giving them the special name qualia. So qualia, we'll show you how they are related to what is outside, But you have to remember, when we're talking qualia, we're talking about, yes, so it's the internal qualities. So why we put a big question mark on that? Well, let's look at this subject of qualia. Qualia. Thank you. I won't push you any more on that because otherwise it'll double the length of this talk. So qualia. This is the standard philosophical approach, the philosopher's red ball, right? And I want you to meditate on this in terms of its redness and its roundness. Now, as you look at this, you are getting this image in your mind. You are not actually contacting this. Remember that. This is a picture on a screen here. Light is coming from that into your eyes. And for all intents and purposes, the outside world is gone at that point. Now that light is setting off things in your eyes, sending messages back to your brain. That's when you experience the redness and the roundness, isn't it? Just like with the floating finger. So when you're looking at this, you're thinking, oh, that's a nice thing over there, but actually you're experiencing it in here. And so that's redness. Now, there's a certain thing that it is like to experience redness. Now, we don't mean that psychologically. Colors have a psychological effect. Red tend to be warm, whereas blue tends to be kind of cold. But we're talking about redness as redness. You're enjoying that wonderful redness of it, right? And there you're enjoying the wonderful blueness of it. That's the effect, that's color qualia, right? Different types of qualia. They're related to all our sensory inputs. We've been talking about what we see, but there's also what we touch, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste. They all send qualia back. And you can analyze all of them in the same way. Sound is a vibration somewhere, and that's setting up a pressure wave which hits your ear, and a little bit of skin goes like that, your eardrum, and you go, well, where's the sound? Is that sound? Movement of skin? And then it moves some little bones, 3 little bones, stirrup, anvil, and hammer. And their movement, is that sound? So you think the sound's out there, but there's no sound in the process. Is there? There's no actual sound in the process. Once your eardrum is moving, once those bones are moving, they're setting up a little pressure on the cochlea, which is that kind of snail-shaped thing in your inner ear. And that's pressuring the fluid in there. And that pressure on the fluid then moves some little hairs, some little cilia. There's no sound there. It's, all the crashing of thunder is not going inside your, those little cilia aren't going boom, 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 We've heard a sound, we better kind of pass it on. Boom. It's not a Chinese whisper like that, right? And then that's only setting off an electrical message which is going to the other side of the brain. This one's going here, this one's going here. So now you've got the same thing as that data in the brain. Where's the sound? And why has the brain got data, but I am experiencing it as a sound? Weird. It really is weird. If you don't think this is weird, you ain't got it. So I'm trying to convince you how weird your own experience is. It's really weird. And the same thing is true when you touch something. All that's happening is another electrical message, but it feels like something. And smell, why does a particular chemicals or molecules smell like something? Do they smell? No. We don't even know how smell works yet. Actually, it's amazing. There's a lock and key theory, but people aren't very sure about that. That is more to do with the shape of the molecules connecting into the shape of a receptor. And that sends a message. But why does that message from that lock and key and the message from this lock and key, which is a different chemical, going to the brain, why when the electrical signal is essentially the same, it's electricity, why is one experienced in one way and one experienced in another? Why do either of them have that qualitative experience? Weird. Taste, same thing. And and there are other types of qualia related to your internal sensations, and it could be, we mentioned hungry before, or it could be emotional. I'm frightened, or I'm happy, right? These are actually emotions are qualia, or at least what you experience as emotions are qualia. They have their own qualities. There is something that is like to be happy, isn't it? And there is something very different to be fearful or frightened. So they have qualities which you experience. And even our thoughts and ideas have certain qualities to them. There is something that it is like to feel an idea, to get an idea, to have an inspiration, to hear your voice. So qualia are real, aren't they? People think, well, maybe no, the outside stuff is real. Wait a minute. The only reason I know there's outside stuff is because I experience it as qualia. So if qualia aren't real, then God knows what's out there. No, this is your only experience of everything, qualia. You experience nothing else about the world, only how that world is represented to you within your mind as qualia. That's all there is. Well, I'm not saying there's all there is. That's all you get to experience of what there is. I'm not saying there isn't a world out there. So nothing else is more real to you than qualia. And they're real even when they're illusion, right? Even though there's no finger out there, still what your experience is a real experience. You're having a real experience of an illusion. Okay? That's how it works. And they're private and ineffable. You may not just, there's a little circle here. The thing about qualia is they're yours, they're internal. And it's very hard to pass them on to others and explain what you were talking about in all of this. So they are private and ineffable, and they're subjective. I'm sure you've all seen this, and some of you, I think, have seen it before. But hands up who sees this image, gold and white, or blue and black, right? Two different views. I can't see it in blue and black. Some of you can't see it in white and gold. And that's interesting because exactly, it's usually difficult on a screen like this because it's changing the color. But the original color that was shared on the internet, the initial picture, is such that the mind is looking at it going, which way should I go? I'm not quite sure. And it goes one way, and once it's gone one way, it can't go the other way on this one. There are other illusions where the mind can go back and forwards, but on the color one, it can't. The original was black and blue, but that's not of importance. The real issue is what you're seeing here. That's the qualia, right? So this brings us now to Mary's room, and we're looking at visual qualia because it's kind of the easiest to analyze. So Mary's room is a story about this little girl from her birth. Her psychotic neuroscience parents decided to lock her in a room that was all white, to dye her hair, bleach her hair, put white stuff on her face, only feed her white foods, rice and cauliflower, and so she never got to experience color. Never. But she became a very famous neuroscientist herself, learned all about how the whole process of the brain works, and could understand when we talk about red, we're talking about a wavelength around 650 nanometers. So I know she knew all about color. Did she? did she actually know what it was like to experience red? This is theoretical. Don't feel sorry. You know, we're not going to contact social services on this one. Probably should have. It's theoretical. So theoretically, could she have understood redness? No, that's the thing. Because we are told, we're taught in school, that light is a spectrum of colors within the visible range, and that each wavelength relates to a particular color. And it's certainly true that if you expose yourself to particular wavelengths, you will experience a color relating to something here. You will experience that. But is light colored? Do photons have color? Does a light wave have color? No. And Isaac Newton, who did the work on this, looked at it and thought, yeah, okay, wavelengths, colors, but where's magenta? Where's this color? It's not in the spectrum. So how can you have, if all the colors we experience are in this visible range of the spectrum, how come I'm experiencing this color? Weird. Well, it's easy to explain in science because it's just a combination of redness and blueness. So if you have a red light and a blue light and you overlap them, you'll get magenta. So that's where you get magenta from. Easy. No, wait a minute. Sorry. How do these colors mix? Where are they mixing? If I have a red source of light and a blue source of light, they're giving off light at particular individual wavelengths. I put them together and then I experience this. But two wavelengths mixing together doesn't get you a new wavelength. Physics doesn't work like that. So there is no mixing of the wavelengths. What's happening is that your eye is picking up two wavelengths from this part of the image going into the eyes. But that's setting off two different cones, two different types of cones, one that is geared for the 650 and one which is geared around the 450, 480 thing. So it's two different cones are firing and separately sending a signal back to the brain. So there's no mixing in the eyes. There's no mixing in the light outside, no mixing in the eyes. Now is it the brain putting it together? But the brain hasn't got any color in it. There's no color in the brain. Therefore, this mixing is happening post-brain. It's got to be something that is happening after the brain has done its work, after the eyes have received the thing, after everything else physically happening. There is a mixing going on of these qualia and producing a new type of qualia. Okay? And if you think that light and color are related, that color is just a phenomenon of the outside world, then I want you to try this. Okay? Now, don't do this if you've got any sensitivity of your eyes, but you're kind of covering your eyes so that no light can get in, and you're in darkness now. And if you just put a little pressure on your eyeball, not too much, don't do this if it's a problem, just a little pressure and hold, you'll start to see that certain colors start to appear, yeah? You see, are you getting reds? First of all, usually it's blues and greens come up first, and then if you press harder, you're going to get red. If you really, really hard, you're going to get white. But so, okay, that's enough. That's probably enough. Come back. Don't want to cause you any trouble. Practice that one on your own if you like. But the idea is that you can prove to yourself that light or color can be experienced without light. Therefore, don't think that color and light are the same thing. That would be a mistake. Your mind can generate color from stimulus between your eyes and your brain. The eye doesn't have color, the brain doesn't have color, but your mind can recognize something is going on in your eyes, sending signals to your brain. I should interpret that as color. This is a fascinating thing, that there is something beyond the brain, mind, able to analyze the functions of our senses and how they send information to the brain and how that information is processed. But the experience we receive from all of that is post-brain. It's a post-brain analysis and representation by the mind. Now we do a few little kind of illusions just to show you that the mind is interpreting things, not the way the brain has. This is Adelson's checkerboard. He's got two squares, A and B. Are they the same tone of grey? Do they look the same? They don't look the same. Of course they are the same in this illusion, but now that you know that they're the same, when you go back, you still see them differently. Back. Ding. No, still haven't got it. No, we don't do it. Something is changing. The same information is there. All of these balls, the circular balls, they're all the same color. They are all the same color. It's just because of these bars running through and they are positioned in between the bars and different, but they're all just brown. But your mind is generating extra color in the gaps in between. Your mind is generating color that doesn't exist there. You know, we have hard time, you know, this one we cannot see straight. This one will make you feel seasick. You're seeing movement now, not just colors, not just shapes. Now you're seeing movement that is inexplicable. Here, you're starting to see dots where there is no dots. You're seeing things that are unreal. You're getting dots, you know, popping up in your vision of them. Then we have bistable percepts, you know, that, what is this? Duck or a rabbit? Yeah, it's the old thing. See if you can see both at the same time. No, you can't. You flick. Yes, but when you're seeing that half rabbit, oh yeah, now I can. Oh, duck. Yeah, no, yeah. So same with this one. The mind flips back and forwards. All about how you see things. So in this way, we kind of just prove to ourselves that qualia are irreducible. They are not properties that the brain itself can generate. They are different to the qualities and properties that we know of within neuroscience. And that is why many philosophers, here's David Chalmers, he says, qualia, the hard problem. The really hard problem of consciousness is explaining the subjective experience of qualia. Here's Francis Crick. This is what he wrote in those papers that he was doing. The most difficult aspect of consciousness is the so-called hard problem of qualia. The redness of red, the painfulness of pain, and so on. Then he said, straight away, no one has produced any possible explanation as to how the experience of the redness of red, and he also says, and the painfulness of pain, could arise from the actions of the brain. It appears fruitless to approach this problem head on. This is the admission. Here's Michael Tai, who wrote the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, said, for many on both sides of the argument, qualia are seen as to represent the de facto proof that conscious perception must be non-neural. So this isn't me just saying this. This is known. It's known throughout the business, if you like. And David Chalmers defined it. Look, he said, that's the easy problems. Now, it's thoroughly complex. There's no question. This is incredibly complex stuff. What's going on in the biology of the body, the eyes, and what's going on in the brain. It's just incredible. But really, when you compare it, that's the easy part. This bit is the hard problem. So this tells us that we need to understand that the physical and biological properties and functions which manifest the world and the body and brain are of one set of properties and functions, and that the cognitive properties and functions, including the ability to experience qualia, belong in a different basket. which for today we're just going to call mind. So these are two distinct sets of properties, right? And the mind is non-neural, not a product of the brain. Now, that isn't the end of the problem. The hard problem doesn't stop there. Actually, it started to get even harder. Because, all right, we know we can't explain this, the qualitative percept, but you've got to ask yourself, that's what we experience, but why? Why are we experiencing that? Who or what does the experiencing? We've got to ask that question. Because remember, I am the witness of my thoughts. That is qualia are part of my mental world. Therefore, I am the witness of qualia. So therefore, we have to ask ourselves, something must be experiencing this. This is two pictures. This is from Terminator 2, way back early 90s, more recent Iron Man. Both, this is the inside the mind of Arnie, the Terminator, you know, where what his computer is showing him about his nemesis, the other Terminator there. And this is Dr. Stark inside his exoskeleton with all the data showing what his skeleton robotic body is doing. Okay, one of these is a philosophical error. Very quickly, which one? Huh? The one on the left. Why is that, sir?
Shows experience in that.
That it shows experience. But there's no one experiencing that data because it's a robot.
Well, who's?
Well, that's then what your point is absolutely right. This is the one that's problematic, because computers don't need to represent the information from their sensors as pictures. Does a computer have pictures inside its central processing unit? No, it doesn't. It deals with everything just as digital information, just passes it around. It can manipulate, do whatever it likes. Robots do not need to present their data as words, text, pictures, and all this sort of stuff. They don't need to do that. Whereas here, there is an entity, a conscious entity inside the skeleton. And he wants to know what the body is doing. And the skeleton is designed in order to tell the person inside what it's doing. Therefore, it puts all this information on the screen for the individual to experience. So you've got to ask yourself, why is the brain, why is there qualia related to the brain? The brain doesn't need qualia in order to do what it needs to do in its processing. It's a computer, basically. You know, there's differences, but in basic terms, it is an information processing system. So it doesn't need to turn that information into qualia. So why is it doing that? The same reason as when you get a computer, you do like it to have a screen, right? We do like that. When we get a new phone, we do like it to have a screen. Why? Because it's for the operator. A machine is trying to talk to something that is not itself. It is trying to present its data in a format that this guy can understand. Because what's going on in the box inside, we don't understand. We can't read electricity moving amongst the gates in the processors. We can't read that. We need something which is going to take that data and cast it on the screen of our experience. So similarly, what we're postulating is that there has to be, this is the screen that is representing this data in qualia form so that the experiencer, the witness, the seer, gets to appreciate it. So now we know what's going on inside our body. Not because we are the brain, not because we can read brain data, because something is taking that data and presenting it in a nice way, in an attractive way, in an enjoyable way even, that we can appreciate. So this gives us the even harder problem. you not only have to explain that, you have to explain why there's an experiencer. Why is there subjectivity in this? That's what John Searle was challenging. Unified qualitative subjectivity. So that means that we don't just have two sets of stuff, 1, 2. We have a third set of stuff. Because consciousness as the observer is, again, different, distinctive in properties and functions. Consciousness does what this cannot do. Qualia are inert. They're qualities of the mind. But it is consciousness which is the observer of the qualities of the mind. So we see that there are 3 different sets of properties and functions. And that's why we call this the 3-function model of conscious experience. Our big problem when we talk to academics is that they are conflating all this as if it's all part of the brain. Because that's their belief. They don't want to go beyond that. But actually, they ignore the fact that when we analyze it, and they know the analysis, we see 3 distinctive functions. So, still to come, we will be looking at how the brain can handle these functions. Because there's still more problems with the brain, I'm afraid. Science of non-neural mind and consciousness, we'll look at that, and we'll look at our many selves. But we have 5 minutes before we break. That's pretty good. So we can take questions. I'm going to repeat your questions so that it catches for Zoom. So first.
Prior to these lectures, I always thought consciousness meant awareness, but from your lecture, I wanted to ask you, can you say that consciousness means a witness?
Quite right that most people will talk about consciousness as the experience. And therefore, it's kind of my experience at the moment is redness of red or something, right? But they forget to analyze that I see that experience from a first-person perspective. And that's why we did that analysis at the beginning, that actually I see myself as the seer, the observer, the witness of that. And that keeps changing. Those experiences that I am having change, but the I that is having the experiences is still the same. So therefore, you've already created a distinction between the two. This is perpetual, this is changeable. So therefore, we have to put consciousness in a different basket. Because of its subjectivity, because of its persistence, because of its ability to have the experience, not that it is the experience. Okay? Sorry, I didn't repeat the question. Such a good question. I hope they caught that.
This is good or bad, or this is enjoyable, or I don't like this. Is that considered to be part of the qualia?
The question is, are the different labels we put to the experiences that we have as good, bad, are they part of the qualia? There are 2 things. Every experience that we have sets off secondary experiences. And the example of seeing redness is, I gave that, you see redness, you feel warm. The feeling warm is a secondary experience which is coming out of your first qualia experience, right? So it's feeling warm is also a qualia experience. Thinking, I like that is a third qualia experience. It's of enjoyment and feeling. But the feelings are real, but they're related to what qualia is feeding you. And we're going to have a look at that throughout the day, that what we experience, we always are having a real experience, but we are delegating that experience to what the mind is filling with. Whatever the qualia the mind is filling with, we take as, and we experience that, and we think, that's us, that's me experiencing. And it is me experiencing.
That our subjective labels that we apply, that those are like a third level of qualia, or are they considered something separate from qualia?
Oh, they are there are mental constructs in order to, there are sort of cognition rather, that we are not only kind of, I see red, I feel it's warm, I like that. So we can either just take that as the sort of flow of thoughts, or we do what we did earlier in the higher order reflection, where we then think about, I'm feeling warm, I like that, that's nice. I should do this more often, or whatever it is. You know, that analysis, those kind of labels are part of a higher order analysis of our qualia. But that higher order analysis is also qualitative experience. That's why we say ideas and thoughts, which are part of that higher order analysis, are also in the world of qualia and the mind. We got there, huh? All right, exactly 11:15. We're going to take a break for 15 minutes,